Welcome to this solo edition of BGO Blind Pig. I'm Boone, as I'm known on bgobsession.com, our home forum, where you can find all kinds of great football talk. Encourage you to stop by and join. Everything we do is free. We have a great community, and we would love to have you. Last season, we started a new feature on BGO, and it was called Opposing Delicacies. And the idea behind Opposing Delicacies was when the Commanders traveled to road games, we would look at the city involved, and then we would pick out the most famous regional delicacy that they had, and we'd make it on game day. And so we did beef on weck up in Buffalo. We did the most infamous one was last year we played Denver on the road, and I ordered up some Rocky Mountain oysters online. You can get anything online. And I made Rocky Mountain oysters at home, which, if you're not familiar, is beef testicles. And I admit to some trepidation on that one, but they really turned out amazing. I was surprised. I'm a pretty adventurous eater, but that pushed me right to the limit. But they were really good. And of course, tonight we play Cincinnati in Cincinnati. So one of the most famous dishes to come out of Cincinnati is Cincinnati chili. And there's a lot of controversy when you talk about Cincinnati chili, because all those Texas chili people will come out of the woodwork screaming, it's not really chili. It's not really chili. And the reason they say that is because Cincinnati chili is usually served over spaghetti. And we'll get into the specifics of that. But it's got meat in it. It's got a lot of spices. It's tomato based. So in my book, I'm going to vote it is chili, but it is a different kind of a chili. But no matter what you call it, whether you call it chili, whether you call it some kind of a hybrid chili, or whether you say that is not stinking chili, it doesn't matter, because Cincinnati chili is delicious. So I have a lot of family in Cincinnati, and I learned how to make Cincinnati chili at home many years ago. So I'm going to share with you the recipe that I found online, which I think is the closest thing to truly authentic Cincinnati chili. And that is on a website called The Paupered Chef. I'll link that in the description. So if you want to check it out, it's a really cool webpage with kind of a history of where did Cincinnati chili come from, but most importantly, how to make a really good batch of Cincinnati chili. So we're going to start it out, and I'm just going to show you some clips of how I made Cincinnati chili today in preparation for the Commanders whooping some ass against the Cincinnati Bengals on the road. Well, the first step in making Cincinnati chili is we're going to make our spice blend. I've already gone ahead and done that, but basically what you're doing is you're putting peppercorns, you're putting whole allspice, whole cloves, cinnamon, some salt, some cayenne, and some bay leaves. You're going to tear those bay leaves up into as small pieces as you can, like you've seen I've done there. And you're going to crush that all up with a mortar and a pestle if you have one. If you don't feel like screwing with that, you can, of course, you could buy ground cloves, ground allspice, etc. The only thing you'd have to tear up are the bay leaves. But I think crushing the fresh spices whole makes a big difference if you care about that kind of thing, but it'll be good regardless. So I've gone ahead and crushed this all up till it's pretty much a fine powder, and then we're going to come back to that when we're ready to make our sauce. So of course you could use a food processor for that, really any kind of a grinder or food processor, or you could go the easy route and go ahead and buy those spices I mentioned ground up if you don't want to screw around with having to crush them. One thing I did neglect in my list of spices is there's also some cumin in that spice mix. So whatever it takes, the spice blend is really one of the things that makes Cincinnati chili really good. So we're going to go on to the next step. So for step 2, what we're going to do is we're going to get a couple of quarts, 3 or 4 quarts of water, doesn't matter how much. Put some salt in it, bring it to a rolling boil like I've got going here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take some hamburger. In this case, I'm using ground chuck. It doesn't really matter because what we're doing is basically rendering all the fat out of the ground beef. But I do recommend that you kind of tear up the ground beef into threads as much as possible. So I'm gonna quickly or carefully dump this into my pot of boiling water. And this is a very quick process where we are gonna stir that ground beef. And you could actually turn off the stove at this point. But we're basically just gonna stir this up, and the goal is to separate those threads of ground beef, and we're only gonna cook it for about a minute. And you'll be able to tell when it's done, you know, because all the pink is gone. Again, just salted water. The recipe, this calls for a couple of pounds. This is actually twice that, because I'm making a double batch, but I'm gonna put the link to the recipe in the comments or the description, so you'll be able to see exactly if you're a recipe person. I kind of use recipes as a guide, not the letter of the law. But this is about 4 pounds of ground chuck, and you can kind of see it's already looking kind of colorless. It's not the most appealing looking stuff at this point, but that's really all I needed to do, and really the whole function of this step is just to get all of that fat out of there. So what we're going to end up with is very lean ground beef, and then I'm going to strain it, and we will move on to the next step. So yeah, cooking the ground beef, that's probably one of the more different things. I'm pretty sure most of you have never dumped a bunch of hamburger into boiling water and stirred it for a minute, but it comes out of that process totally cooked and ready to go. And one of the things about Cincinnati chili is you could do everything separately ahead of time, and then pull it out and warm everything up at game time. So we're going to go on to step 3. So you can see now we've got our ground beef drained. You can kind of see how it breaks it down into little threads, very fine little threads. And so that's looking really good. The next step we took is to take a couple of onions. I'm doing a double recipe again. So I've got 2 onions and 12 cloves of garlic. If you were just doing a single recipe, you just use 1 onion and 6 cloves of garlic. I put some olive oil in here, a little bit of salt and pepper. And the main thing with the onions and the garlic, this is going to be the base for the sauce. You want to make sure that you chop them pretty finely, because you don't want a real chunky sauce. You want it to be kind of smooth. So I'm going to saute these until they just start to get translucent. Another couple of minutes here. They don't need to be really limp and overcooked, because they're going to go in the sauce, which we'll assemble in just a few minutes. And they're going to cook some more in that sauce for really as long as you want them to cook. This is a good recipe to throw together and then let it simmer on the stove for a couple hours while you're watching the Commanders take care of the Bengals. Anyway, we will come back and finish our sauce in just a minute. So pretty straightforward. That's probably the most labor-intensive part of making Cincinnati chili, is just sauteing those onions and garlic. So now we're getting ready to head to the finish line. Let's talk about how to put the sauce together. So on to step 4. I've got my onions and my garlic where I want them, just kind of gently sauteed. And now we're going to assemble the rest of the sauce. And the rest of the sauce is pretty simple. We're going to add, normally it would be like a 15-ounce can of tomato sauce, but I'm going to add double that. Again, I'm making a double recipe. So I'm going to add that in there. Any kind of tomato sauce you like. Then the next addition we're going to make is, again, if you were making a single recipe here, it would be 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar and 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. But I've doubled that up here, so I'm going to add that in. Then I'm going to add in those spices that I ground up earlier from my mortar and pestle, and I'll get the remainder of that in there because we want all of that in there. And I would encourage you, when you look at the recipe, if you do decide to make this, go up those spices, man, because the spices really make this recipe. That cinnamon and the cloves and the allspice and the bay leaf and the salt and the pepper, and also cumin is in that ground up mix as well. And then the last solid thing we're going to add, which is kind of crazy, is I've taken some unsweetened, you don't want to use sweetened chocolate, but unsweetened baker's chocolate, and I'm going to put it in there. The recipe calls for me to grate it, but I've just found that it doesn't matter. It's going to melt. I mean, you're putting it in a hot pan, it's going to melt just fine without grating it. I think they call for half an ounce, so I have a little bit more than an ounce in there. And then the last thing we're going to add is a quart of boiling water, in this case 2 quarts because I'm doing a double recipe. And then once we have our water in there, we will add the ground hamburger in as well. And again, this is one of those things you could start in the morning, and you could finish up, just simmer it all day long for as long as you want on low heat. So I'm going to add my hamburger, which is already cooked in there, and then we'll mix that up really well. And again, man, this is going to make an incredible chili sauce. It's just really zesty and sweet and all kinds of flavors from those spices. So we'll saute this. We'll put it on low heat with a cover on, and in a couple of hours it's going to be magical, and we'll go on from there. So yeah, that's how you put the sauce together. Again, it's not really that difficult, just some different ingredients and maybe what you would normally think of putting in traditional chili. So, but the most important thing is, once you've made your sauce, is the additions that you potentially can put on your Cincinnati chili to really take it to the next level. So let's talk a little bit about that. So if you have any familiarity with Cincinnati chili at all, or if you're up in Cincinnati and you go to a restaurant, Skyline or somewhere else and order it, they're going to ask you, what way do you want it? And there are 5 ways. One way is just the chili itself, which is delicious, but you're not going to want to go that route. 2-way is over spaghetti, cooked spaghetti. 3-way is with chopped onion. 4-way is with cheddar cheese over the top of it. And 5-way would be adding some cooked kidney beans to it. And I suggest you go beyond that. And I call that Cincinnati chili all the way. And that would be adding oyster crackers and the hot sauce of your choosing over the top of it. And man, when you've had Cincinnati chili all the way, you're going to crave it multiple times a year. And hopefully, if you watch this podcast, you'll feel comfortable making it. Again, go to poppardchef.com and you can find the recipe, or the easiest way to find it is just search "In Praise of Cincinnati Chili," and it'll bring you to the Poppard Chef website, where you can learn all about the history of Cincinnati chili and how to make it yourself. So that's my introduction to you to Cincinnati chili. We got a big game tonight against the Bengals. I've got my chili sauce on the stove simmering. It'll be there for another couple hours, and then I'll get my additions ready to go, and we will be feasting on Cincinnati chili tonight here at the Jeffries household. It's super spicy. It's a little sweet. It's zesty, and I think if you try it, set aside whether or not you want to really describe it as chili, and just try it. And I encourage you to use all the toppings. And it is really a great dish that I like to introduce people to. So that wraps up my solo blind pig episode. I wish everybody a great evening watching the game tonight. I didn't predict us to win, but I watched Dallas go down yesterday. I watched Philadelphia almost get upset. And I certainly think that Washington is capable of surprising a lot of people tonight. I'm not going to bet on it, but I think it's a possibility. So I will be sitting down with a big bowl of Cincinnati chili rooting on my Commanders tonight, and I hope you do the same. Come visit us at bgobsession.com. We've got a Facebook group with a lot of great members on it. We've got an Instagram account. We're very active on Twitter. And of course, we are the home to the BGO Blind Pig podcast. So like us, subscribe, and most importantly, come join us at bgobsession.com. Have a great game tonight, and here's good luck to our team.